In the midst of vendors dropping the ball, missed MOQs, and some straight up exit scams, our saviors are stepping in. Razer has taken a huge push into the custom mechanical keyboard space, and I'm here for it. Let's get into the review of their latest product, the Razer BlackWidow V2 75%, an FR4 plate fully factory modded with underglow RGB and a volume rocker. And they updated the cult classic Razer orange tactiles. I'm legitimately proud to say that this showcase is sponsored by Razer. I'm here to use my experience in the custom mechanical keyboard world to help you make a good purchase decision and also give Razer feedback so they can help us be rid of GBs forever. But trust me, my opinions are always my own. This keyboard really impressed me because just from the specs, it seems like they've been listening to all of the innovations that we've had in custom keyboards in the last few years. First of all, we're finally rid of those kind of gross, cheaper aluminum, or even worse, stainless steel plates. Those often sound harsh and sharp. We have an FR4 plate here, which is generally more rounded in sound, sometimes a little bit quieter, but at least it doesn't pierce the ears. I would not use Gateron inks in here because a switch like that would sound very quiet in a gasket mount FR4 plate. We have here an aluminum top case, which gives it some premium aesthetic from the top, while having a plastic back keeps it more affordable. We'd love to see a full CNC aluminum case, but at least as a step in the right direction. It's really surprising to see a pour-on gasket mount here with PCB foam, case foam, and here specifically, factory installed tape mod. This was originally called the Tempest mod, where you put tape on the back of the PCB. It was painter's tape and it was blue and it was kind of messy because the tape isn't very thick. We just do layers and layers and layers and it looks like a garage project. But that mod, especially with the foam and the FR4 plate, creates a very deep sound. What I'm super stoked to see is that the stabilizers are lubed with 205G0. They hear us, they see us. If you're not in the hobby, lubing things with Crytox 205G0 sounds pretty bizarre. It's aerospace grade lubricant, and yeah, it's freaking weird that we use it for keyboards, but really once you get down to it, it makes a huge difference in sound. It's a labor of love because without doing that process, you get crunchy sounding switches and rattly space bars. Although this is built with plate mount stabilizers by default, for ease of modding, you can actually use standard screw-in stabilizers in here. So you pop this out. Right here, I have Gateron V2 stabilizers. I personally prefer screw-in stabilizers because it sounds a little more tight and controlled. Plate mount stabilizers, unless you upgrade to something by Gateron or something, it's not great. In terms of lubricant, there's already a lubricant in the plate mount stabilizers. There's a little bit in there, but I personally added a little bit more grease to make it sound a little bit better. So keep in mind that at least they're going in the right direction, but their lube process isn't as refined just yet. So we have here Doubleshot ABS keycaps, and that seems to be standard. Some people prefer it over PBT, but the ABS keycaps, these are pretty thin. GMK ABS is typically around 1.5 millimeters, and we're seeing 1.2 millimeters for the thickness here. So with the less thick keycap, it's a less full sound. So if you want a full sound like the kind of high-end custom mechanical keyboards, swap this for a thicker keycap. Thicker is better. What I like about Razer is that they simply didn't just copy the most popular layout on 75% keyboards, which is having a knob here. In 2021, holy cow, like every single keyboard was a clone of the Satisfaction 75. Here, they actually kept some of the Razer identity. Razer is a gaming company and they love their RGB, macros, and volume rollers. On top of that, instead of just having a roller, they did actually add 2 media buttons. And the volume rocker is textured. So we talked about aesthetic and we talked about the construction, but how does it sound? Honestly, Razer oranges are a meme classic and have been surprisingly good. I'm very happy that they brought it back so people don't have to hunt for them anymore. One thing to note is that the Razer oranges have an LED diffuser. When used in the Razer BlackWidow, there's no problem. The keycaps are taller, it's a north-facing PCB, but when you use it with cherry profile keycaps and other boards like this Cycle 7, this is a south-facing PCB. Cherry profile keycaps will interfere and it will sound dull and it will bottom out on the LED diffuser. Notice how it sounds fine when we use the Razer keycap. To fix this, open up the switch, take out the LED diffuser, then you can use your cherry profile keycaps on any orientation PCB. There was a period of time where people were going to eBay hunting old Razer keyboards to try to get these sought after tactile switches. They're basically very similar to an MX Brown. They're a light tactile, so it's not a huge tactile bump, let's say like a Boba U4 Thok or a Corsa or anything like that. So it's actually more comfortable, especially if you prefer linear switches. Going from a linear switch to a really big tactile bump is really jarring and turns a lot of people off from tactile switches. These Razer oranges definitely feel like upgraded MX Browns. And the factory lube on them is great. don't really hear any leaf ping or spring ping in there. So they did a great job with these switches. I do wish they were 5-pin, unfortunately. They're 3-pin, so if you're going to use them in a half plate or a plateless, you're going to have a bad time. But if you do want to buy these switches separately, they do sell them separately. So the board with the FR4 plate, tape, foam configuration sounds very nice. I don't use tactiles a lot, but if I'm forced to use a tactile, definitely prefer light tactiles. Like I said, it's easier to transition from a linear switch to a light tactile build. I definitely am going to consider these Razer oranges in future builds because I have some broken in MX rounds. Cherry MX Brown leaves are just kind of noisy and crunchy, so there's a lot of situations where I don't really love it. I kind of just deal with it because using a Cherry MX Brown is kind of a meme and kind of funny, but using Razer oranges is also a meme and kind of funny. So these sound much cleaner. They're marketed as a silent switch. They're definitely quieter, but I don't really see the silent portion. I definitely think that these are silent compared to typical like clickies and gamer boards. So in that regard, yeah, it's silent, right? Overall, the volume is perfect for me. Like I could use it at home, could use it in the office, no problem. Honestly, when you go to an office and people use membrane keyboards and they slam the spacebar and enter, because they do, that's way louder than any switch that you can bring to the office. Like, don't worry about the sound of your keyboard unless you're actually punching your keyboard and using like Zeo clickies or something like that. You'll be fine. All right, we talked about enough. Let's hear the sound test of the stock Razer oranges with the full foam configuration from the factory and the Doubleshot ABS keycaps. Honestly, it's pretty solid for something that you don't have to put together. Now the problem is, for some reason, this wrist rest right here, which is nice and comfy, doesn't feel cheap. Can't really bend it down the middle, no creaking. So you put this on the board, it actually sounds deeper and fuller. That's weird. I think it just kind of adds heft to it because it's magnetic. Oh my god, definitely suggest if you want a best sound, use the wrist rest. If you don't like wrist rest, get used to wrist rest because it's going to improve the sound. Even by a small margin, I'm a sound guy, so I'm definitely going to notice things like that. But the beauty of this keyboard isn't that it's stock, but rather it can be customizable. So what would Andy V Nguyen do to this keyboard? Honestly, it's kind of ready to go. But if you don't want to use the light tactiles, let's pull out our super secret switches, Penyus. Penyus are very similar to the Black Cherry Pi, a really famous switch in custom mechanical keyboards. It's a Franken switch with a Cherry MX black top, Kale Novelty Cream stem, and a H1 bottom. That makes a long pole switch with 3.5mm travel, bottoms out the center pole, and it sounds very deep and very loud. Penyu is another switch that kind of has a lot of the same characteristics without you having to buy 3 different switches and putting them together. And of course, we'll put in the Gateron V2 stabilizers like I talked about. I just prefer them. They're pretty reliable. It's either that or TX stabilizers. I had Gateron V2 on hand. And sometimes you don't want to deal with snap-in stabilizers because of little plastic and it's annoying. Gateron stabilizers, pretty reliable. Just gotta screw them in so it takes a little bit more work. And in true gamer fashion, let's throw in some GMK. I want to play with some RGB here, so let's use GMK Skeletor. So here's the thing. Sounds pretty solid with the Penyu switches, but we do see that the RGB is getting nuked. The shine through keycaps, as well as the RGB top of the Razer oranges and the diffuser, that adds a lot of RGB and distributes it all over the board. With the opaque Penyus and GMK, a lot of the RGB is blocked. So that's kind of a drawback, but the sound performance is much better. I tried this without the standoffs to try to test because I typically don't like standoffs. It adds stiffness. I don't do that. Without the standoff, the stabilizers sounded really weird. So I think it has to do with the plate and the PCB just not lining up perfectly with the hot swap. But the tape, I kept the tape because the tape really helps a plastic board sound a little bit more full. Plastic bottom boards typically don't have issues with hollowness because it's less metal, but they have an issue with not sounding as kind of full. So the tape alleviates that. The price point of this keyboard is quite competitive at $189 for an all-in-one package. It is a light tactile switch that gamers will gravitate towards, sound and enthusiasts can appreciate, and upgradability to get into the world of custom mechanical keyboards. And it requires no modding. Maybe a little bit of grease on the stabilizers. And there's no group buy for it. No mess, no wait, just instant gratification. And tons of that Razer RGB. Overall, I'm pretty impressed with what Razer is bringing to the table. They've definitely been taking notes for a while. Razer can pump out tons of in-stock units and can be purchasable from stores like Best Buy and Micro Center and other local retailers. So I'm really excited for what is to come in the keyboard hobby. Maybe we will see some brick and mortar stores stock better keycaps, some PBT fans or GMK one day. A company like Razer can usher us into that age. So one can dream. Thanks Razer for sponsoring the showcase. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.